Thank you, Governor, for having us today. Actually, we have a pretty large contingent of our council members, and I'd like to ask the chairman's permission for everyone in the county council to come up at the podium. Chuck Smith, who represents North Augusta, is really taking the lead on this issue at the local level. And Chuck, I think you have a prepared statement that you'd like to provide.
Thank you on behalf of Aiken County. You know, our constituents' goodwill and safety is at stake here. And so Aiken County is dismayed at the capricious and unlawful acts of the Department of Energy and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in their recently announced action to terminate the Yucca Mountain license application and abandon Yucca Mountain as the nation's first repository for high-level waste. DOE's actions violate many of the years of assurances to both South Carolina and Aiken County, and that Yucca Mountain would be available for disposal of these wastes in an out-of-state repository. If DOE proposed actions are not stopped, the citizens of Aiken County will be harmed in many different ways. First, high-level radioactive waste currently at the Savannah River site and planned for disposal at Yucca Mountain will remain at SRS for an indefinite period. We will become a local repository. At DOE, Yucca Mountain's environmental impact statement concludes that public health, safety, and the environment are enhanced by disposal of these wastes at Yucca Mountain compared to leaving them at their current location. Second, Aiken County and the South Carolina ratepayers have made significant financial contributions to the development of Yucca Mountain as a safe means for disposal of both defense and commercial high-level waste. Abandoning Yucca Mountain will waste approximately $500 million in South Carolina ratepayers' contributions. Equally important, our ratepayers will face additional costs for the storing of these materials at their existing locations and investigating possible alternatives to Yucca Mountain. DOE's actions violate the public trust in our federal form of government. Their actions are a direct violation of very specific legislative mandates, and their blatant disregard for legal imperatives does not bode well for any democracy. For these reasons, Aiken County is compelled to support legal action against the Department of Energy and possibly the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. It is unfortunate that we have come to this juncture, but the actions of these two federal agencies are in complete disregard to our long history of a close working relationship in support of DOE, Savannah Riverside programs, and our basic responsibilities to protect the interests of Aiken County citizens. In addition, every taxpayer ought to be incensed at what's taking place in Washington. We've talked about $10 billion being spent on Yucca Mountain, but the Nuclear Waste Policy Act that was created to form and position a site for the repository has probably cost somewhere between $50 and $100 billion of ratepayer and taxpayers' money, and in one fell swoop, they want to disregard that. Thank you very much on behalf of Aiken County.
Anybody would like to step up, and then we'll open up for any questions.
First off, Governor, thank you to you and your office for inviting me to come here today for this press conference. It's an honor to be here. One thing that I think we can all see from the people standing behind me, that it's going to take a team effort to fight what's going on in Washington and what's going on 2,000 miles from here. We have a chief executive officer, lieutenant governor, federal delegation, a local delegation from Aiken. We also have county council at the local level represented, all working together in tandem. It's important that the current leadership of this state, along with the future leadership of the state, continue to work together. As the governor alluded to, this fight can be done in the political halls of Congress. It also may be needed to take into the legal halls. And so as the current attorney general or the next attorney general may have to step up and continue to fight the legal realm in the form of an injunction or some other legal action. But it is most important that our elected officials and our leadership continue to work together, and that we show one front and work together in harmony to fight this type of action for the federal government. Thank you.
Going. All right. Any questions?
Governor, this is driven by polling out of Nevada. Elected officials there don't feel like they can be elected if they don't respond to their citizens' concerns, not to proceed or block Yucca. How do you deal with that?
I go back to where I started, which was This is ultimately not a Nevada and not a South Carolina issue. This is an American issue. I mean, if you really talk about this notion of energy independence, that is well beyond two states of the union. If you talk about making a difference with regard to CO2 emissions or clean air, that's neither a Nevada or a South Carolina issue alone. That's a 50-state issue. And the 10 or the $100 million that was just alluded to, those aren't South Carolina Nevada issues. Those are ultimately American issues. So I think that this issue goes well beyond one single election that will take place in Nevada, just as it would go well beyond one single election that would take place in South Carolina.
I guess more to the point, how would South Carolina convince those in Nevada this is the right thing to do?
In other words, South Carolina will never convince Nevada, Nevada will never convince South Carolina. But I say that is not the point. The point is that it's much larger than either of those two states. It's fundamentally, we have almost a 30-year compact that has existed for Republicans, Democratic administrations alike, where there's been consensus around a permanent repository for high-level nuclear waste.
So let me understand this. In a state that protests real ID, that protests federal action intervening in the state, it's okay for the federal government to impose Yucca Mountain on citizens of Colorado.
It's the attempt at the gotcha question. I got that. But I mean, I don't understand it. Help me understand. In other words, it would be South Carolina's prerogative as a state to say we agree or we disagree with ID, just as it would be our prerogative on any other issue to say we agree or we disagree. On this one, we're saying once again that we disagree, which we have a history dealing with any number of decisions coming out of Washington. So I don't understand what real ID would have to do with this.
It's the federal government imposing its will on citizens of the state.
But it's not the federal government's will. In other words, it is the Obama administration's choice in this instance, based on an election outcome that they might fear in Nevada, to make this decision. And this has been raised by, again, folks at the local level, at the state level, and again, federal officership level, to say, well, wait a minute, does that really make sense given the amount of money that's already gone in, somewhere between $110 billion, given its implications in terms of energy independence, and given its implications in America's quest for cleaner air emissions and CO2.
Have you talked to any other governors or any other leaders of states that you can coalition of states against this action by the Obama administration yet?
I think that there's some things for me.
Has anybody here spoken to the Democratic leadership about this from South Carolina, and the delegation members from South Carolina? What's their take on this?
I'll hand off. I will say that, both Republican and Democratic candidates for governor and attorney general are having a press conference. So it's bipartisan from our end. So go ahead.
As far as leadership, no. But I have reached out, as in my comments, I said I was working on a bipartisan resolution. I have reached out to several other offices. I have not heard back from any, so I don't want to call any names right now, but hopefully by the end of the week we'll have something for you.
Have you spoken with Bradley Clocker's office?
We're in contact with them as we speak. Again, I have not spoken to them yet, but we could call sometime.
On the state side, I've spoken to the senator from Sumter and the senator from Richland, both on the other side of the aisle, about the devastation this issue would go forward. The problem we got, of course, is that the time frame is 2 weeks. We don't have time to sit here and argue who's going to carry the ball forward. We better all carry the ball forward, otherwise we're going to be sitting with this waste for the next 100 years.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.